All right, everybody, how you doing? You got me humming here, just kind of thinking of the subject matter I'm about to get to. Actually, I want to give a shout out to a fellow alum from college, Marquette University. Brother Robbie Miller passed away, returned to Allah. Just want to send out some encouragement, inspiration, and compassion and mercy in the loss of this brother who was an amazing man in his community, a good father, a good husband. I went to school with Robbie at Marquette University in 1984 to 1988. Anything I heard about Robbie when he moved to Minneapolis was just positive, and you know it's always a loss when you lose somebody that does things in the community. So I want to start out the show by saying shout outs to Robbie Miller. We hope you're doing well. All right, so let's get to it. Let me welcome you guys to the show. In case you don't know me, my name is Preacher Moss. I'm the host of the SOS, better known as your platform, not just my platform. This is your platform. We go from humor, we go to current events, we go to social issues, we go to just food sometimes. But today, brothers and sisters, we're going to be tackling on this episode of Understanding Our Black History. We're really going to be talking about black mental health. I'm going to give a little bit of a historical perspective about black mental health. That is really fascinating when you really start thinking about what we were talking about in terms of a community and in terms of mental health and some of the undulations of our not preoccupation but fear of pursuing mental health assistance, actually investigating it. Sometimes how we had a very antithetical approach to it, some of the religious implications. It's a lot of things to unpack, brothers and sisters. But here in 2022, I feel like we need to take a very, very realistic look. Several shows ago, we talked about the suicide rate amongst black teens. But you know what we have to understand is that black teens have black parents. And black parents have black parents before them. And some of the things and the pressures and anxieties that we see in our society today, they were probably much more intense back then. And I'm not going to go into this whole description of black people being traumatized. We know that. And that's redundant in this case. It is it's actually the idea that we're traumatized, but we've somehow, in some regards, it's getting better, but we built a wall to treatment. So if you guys will allow me today, I'm going to talk about black mental health from a historical perspective, from a personal perspective, and hopefully somewhere, someplace, this video gets out, this show gets out, and it means something to somebody. And maybe that person will go out and get some help. Or maybe that person will recognize that somebody in their circle needs some help. And we won't have this hesitation. We will have resources. We will have a call to action that our family members, our friends, our brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers may need this help. And we need to be able to identify what this valuable asset is in its capacity to help our community. All right? So listen, buckle up. I'm going to make this thing very open. I would encourage people, if you have comments, to go ahead and put them in the comments section. Send it over. It's okay. If you can't stick around for a response, it's okay. Just put it in the comments section, because your questions or your questions, your concerns, they're valuable. So we want to make sure that nobody is shut out today. So even if you have to put a comment section, something in the comment section, you have to leave, it's okay. We are open. We are going to have a very open discussion about black mental health. All right. Listen, I'm Preacher Moss. This is a shout out show. We're talking about black mental health, understanding our black history here on the Shout Out Show. Let's get it rolling.
We just need help.
Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Muslim Family Services at your command. The people who help people have to say, We need your donations, don't delay. We all have struggles from time to time, but leaders dedicated is what you find. Before another person sheds a tear, support Olive Branch, you don't have to fear. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Sing it with me. Ooh. Ooh. All right, please let me introduce the stars in the building, brothers and sisters. They are the Shout Out Show family, the Shout Out Show soldiers. A very, very dedicated group of people who come here on the show. They give comments, they give support, they lend humor, they lend ideas, concepts. You know what? This is a very open platform. So I want to make sure that I get them in the space where I can appreciate them before I get into the context of the talk today. So first of all, who we got in the comment section today? Who we got we got Sister Ree. What's going on, Sister Ree? Peace and blessings to you and your family. I appreciate all the things you do for myself and my family, and I want you to know that these things are not overlooked. They are highly appreciated. Shout out to you, and shout out to Derek, and shout out to Juwan. Again, that's Sister Ree. Thank you so much. Next up, we got Johnny L. Thomas. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Little brother, what's going on? If I had to get another little brother, man, I just quit. I appreciate your support. And this is, brothers and sisters, a case of somebody who's been with me for over 30 years. You know, over 30 years. Somebody who always check on, make sure that you're okay. Are you all right? Are you eating? These are some of the conversations that we need to have. But the larger conversation about black mental health today, I'm going to get to that. I appreciate you, JT. Shout out to you and the family. Next up, we got my main man, Altaf Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. How are you? We appreciate your presence on the show, your presence on the platform. We are the only show, I believe, that has a Canadian ambassador to the show. Make sure the quality of the show is good on this side of the border and that side of the border. Man, what can I say, brother? We appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next up, we got Sister Ika coming all the way from Depok, Indonesia. Thank you so much, because it's pretty early over there, but you tune in, and we appreciate it. We are not overlooking anything. In fact, thank you for your du'as regarding my mom. I appreciate it. I'm going to let her know that you were looking out for her. Sister Mary, you got somebody praying for you on the recovery. By the way, brothers and sisters, my mom is doing much better. Alhamdulillah. All right, next up, we got our consultant producer, Sister Satana Whitfield, of which none of this is really possible because there's so many aspects to putting together a show. And I have to say this about Sister Satana. I'm not the easiest person to work with. I know. Stop laughing, Sister Satana. I know. Sometimes I get it right. Sometimes I get it really right. Sometimes I get it really wrong. But I'm a creative, so sometimes it requires a certain patience on behalf of Sister Satana and even myself, because I want to make sure that I'm giving a quality presentation. So, you know, I appreciate you, Sister Satana, because I know I'm not the easiest person to work with. All right, let's get to the show. Let's talk about this for a little bit. The pioneer for black psychology is Mr. Francis Sumner. Francis Sumner was the first PhD in psychology. Check out when he was born, 1895. So even if you give him 30 years, he's basically getting his doctorate in the 1920s. Graduated from Lincoln University and made his way to, I'm trying to remember the other school he went to, but he receives his doctorate. And this is what I want you to think about. This is a man who's born not too many years after slavery, somehow gets in his mind, and I have to say this about the community, because I think we're kind of overlooking this. The community produces, if you will, not only high schools, but institutions of higher learning, and produces the intellectual capacity for somebody to understand that there's a need for mental health. They weren't calling it that then, but they were calling it mental health, but in psychology. Because if you think about it, coming out of the slave period, we're talking about antebellum, you're talking about Reconstruction, all of that, brothers and sisters, the one thing that was not focused on in terms of wellness was the free black man and the free black woman and the children that they were responsible for. You know, I can't begin to fathom the scope of mental illness, the scope of depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, whatever you want to call it, that was associated in that period, not just slavery, but the period after slavery, where you dealt with Jim Crow, where you dealt with segregation as a norm. This was not something where you go, it'll get better tomorrow. These are people who lived under the pressure of, this is going to be for the entire expanse of my life. For my lifetime, this is what I have to deal with. And what you begin to see, brothers and sisters, is a development of something that was amazing if you start looking at just the time span. If we put timestamps on things from our father of black psychology to the evolution of the thought that there needs to be, wait for it, there needs to be a separate brand of psychology called black psychology. And that black psychology that they began to develop was specifically designed to help African Americans navigate and also, I want to say, interpret the world around them from the lens of being African American. It's a tremendous thought. You know, you talk about Brother Kenneth Clark, who's he ran research at Howard University, and you have a congealing, not of a lot, not a ton of black psychologists, psychologists, and therapists, but you have enough that recognize the need. Let me give you a story, not a big story, just a short story, but I know when we were kids going to school, myself, Rick, it might happen to you. The biggest fear in elementary school was not that you had to go to the principal's office, because the principal's office meant that they might call your mom or your dad, they got to come off the job, and that was a whole nother level of terrorism you were dealing with. But it was the trip that you had to go get an assessment from the school nurse, not the school psychologist, because we didn't have that. But we had the school nurse, and the school nurse would make rather ubiquitous decisions over what our mental state was. Do you understand what I'm saying? That she would refer you for further evaluation. That it was thought that, something is wrong with this child. Now, this is in the middle of busing and things like that, being ripped from your community and forced to go to another school that honestly does not have your cultural well-being, your social well-being, and your educational well-being in your best interest. And then you were left there to somehow negotiate it, not as adults, but as young children, as first graders and second graders and kindergartners, and we were all living in a very, very siege mentality. Even now, statistics show, brothers and sisters, that of all the mental health practitioners here in the United States, 85% of those mental health practitioners are white. 5% are Asian, another 5% are Latino, and only 4% are African American. We just had a spill here where we began to look at suicides. Sister Regina King lost her son. Very sad, because he seemed like such a bright light, if you will. But we forget, even in the hip-hop space, we've seen suicides. The CEO of Violator, Chris Lighty, a guy you would think has money and things like that, he killed himself. I've listened to Busta Rhymes on his album, Extinction Level Event 2, talk about it in a song, and it pains me, if you will, because we are in a space where we have all these things. We call them advances and social advances and wins and social justice. But in the independent aspect of our mental health, we seem to be losing the fight. And so today, talking about black psychology, brothers and sisters, I want us to hold it up. And what I mean by holding it up is like we need to do the investigation. There's a lot of statistics about how we engage with mental health. I want to say mental health and also the mental health profession. I have plenty of friends who I've tried to refer to stuff, and you don't know how you feel sometimes. Can I say that? You don't really know how you feel sometimes. You have an idea, but you need sometimes professional help to help pull it out of you. So you need something objective to say, hey, this is what it is. Something objective, something that's not judgmental. And we don't have enough of that. If we are 13% of the population, we are dealing with aspects of employment. We deal with quality of life issues more so than probably any other culture here in the United States, any other population. We're very diverse, but we deal with veritable aspects of culture imperative that have to do with life expectancy, quality of life choices. So we have a video I'm going to show here. It's a short video, and we're going to come back. But I want you to understand that this is very important for two reasons, if I can give it to you. Number one, we can't go back and redefine the experiences of our forefathers. Our forefathers struggled and our foremothers struggled because there was an absence of this opportunity. I told you when the father of black psychology was born, 1895. In the 1920s, he gets his PhD. But look at where it is, the 1920s. You're talking about the same decade of what? The Great Depression. The Great Depression that literally sent people over the edge financially and mentally. And you're talking about an underclass. That underclass is black existence having to not only deal with their own mental health issues, but look at the cavalcade of problems of dominant society and how they were handling crisis. So I'm going to go ahead and show this video. We're going to be right back. Can we bring that up, Sultana? A good idea of it. We're going to be back after this message. Thank you guys so much. Stick with us. We're talking about black mental health here on Understanding Our Black History. Preacher Moss will be right back. Hey babies, welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just gotta hear Don't Get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID, put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID, go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID, you need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID, go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying.
invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
So I have my phone out here because I have my notes. I really wanted to make a point of advocating for the history of Black pioneers and, of course, mental health. And I want you to notice some of the dates of when they were born. Per se, Dr. Mamie Phipps Clark, born 1917-1983. The first Black woman, of course, to earn a doctorate, the first Black woman to earn a doctorate in psychology from Columbia University. She died in 1983. What is really interesting is that we had a plethora of people that come to age during when? Civil Rights era. So she's one of the Civil Rights era. This is another one, Dr. Jean Spurlock, in case you didn't know. She was one of the first ones, and she actually talked about the whole aspect of mental health, but she branched out. She talked about LGBTQ community before there was those letters, brothers and sisters, and she identified the idea of sexual orientation in the Black community and what that meant. Of course, you know Dr. Robert Williams, Dr. Robert Lee Williams, number 2, who came up with the Black Intelligence Test. I don't want to say the word, the BITCH test, but he came up with that test, and I think it was really amazing about Black intellectual, because a lot of times when you did intelligence testing, it was based on a white cultural experience. He came up with a test that tested us for Black cultural experience, which is groundbreaking in the fact that nobody had done that before. And number 2, it brought out a whole nother level of research in the context of how we see America through our particular lens, but also how do we see ourselves through America's lens, which is something I want to say had not been done before, and sometimes we still have to revisit that. When you really start breaking it down, whole idea of the importance of Black mental health, let's be honest. When I was growing up, we didn't hear a lot about Black psychologists. We didn't hear a lot about Black doctors. We did to a little bit, but not in the aspect of mental health. Why? Why? Some of the theories about why African Americans have been hesitant or reticent about pursuing mental health does have a lot to do with accessibility. Accessibility to good mental health is not something that when you went through some of the tougher areas of the United States, low income areas, it wasn't conducive for some folks, for people to actually mentally lift themselves up. We have a very, very strong spiritual contingency that says that our spirits can lift us up. That with God, all things are true, all things are able, or all things are possible. I do believe that. But there is this space that we also have to understand human frailty, not weakness. Human frailty. When I say frailty, not weakness, what I mean is we all have little parts in us that sometimes are damaged. And when I say weakness, that's what we are perceived. We feel somebody else is perceiving that way. But human frailty, the ups and downs and the ins and outs of getting up and do something every day. The Black experience has always been, I guess, a phenomenon for some people, because in something, and I've heard people talk about this in lectures, that by all accounts we should not be here. We should be mentally deficient, mentally void for all the things that have happened to African Americans, even up to this point. We deal with a lot of things psychologically through television and media and social media in particular, and we watch these things, and somehow, some way, we, for the most part, in a lot of regards, we don't succumb to them. We don't build these apparatuses that tear us down away from our spirit or begin to have us question our own existence. And I think we need to, if at all, begin to celebrate, but talk more about these things. And when I say talk more about it, I mean having real conversations. Like I think back, when I was growing up in on the East Coast, my grandmother's house, we had a guy. His name was Two Quarters. We called him Two Quarters. And the reason we call him Two Quarters was every time he said, give me 2 quarters, give me 2 quarters. Now, as a child, we would watch adults kind of entertain 2 quarters, but what we didn't realize, or what they did realize, is that 2 quarters was off, as we used to say. He's off a little bit. No, 2 quarters wasn't off. He was mentally ill. And in our own way, in the community's own way, they tried to look out for 2 quarters. Now, eventually, you lose track. In Washington, D.C., they had the main mental health facility, a place called St. Elizabeth's. And the story and the tragedy of St. Elizabeth's is during the Reagan era, because most of the attendees of St. Elizabeth were African American. They simply cut the funding for St. E's and they let the mentally ill people leave without services, without resources, and without I want to say mercy. And I hate to say this, but that population, large population, they became a part of the homeless population. So the issue of not just being dealing with mental illness, now you are homeless dealing with mental illness. So you can see where this thing is there's a lot of compartments to it. It's a lot. I want to say it's a lot of things to unpack, but it's a lot of things to definitely understand, because even now we're still trying to figure out. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, because that genie was never in the bottle. It was among us. It's in us. And the checks and balances that we talk about in terms of Black mental health, it's different. This COVID period, this period of social justice, it was a breaking point. It was a breaking point. It wasn't just a social justice. This was a mental justice exercise. That we sat and watched a man get killed on the ground by the police, and we watched the whole thing. We watched the whole thing. It was not a thing where it happened, we didn't see it, and there was tape around the body. We watched a murder committed on social media, committed on TV. And we turned the TV off. Every one of us needed to do a checkup from the neck up and say, are you okay? Because there's something about watching that stuff, and if you don't have any feeling, or you don't have any empathy, or you don't have any kind of emotion stirring around about that is wrong, or that is incorrect, or that is immoral, or that is illegal, or that is criminal, yeah. And then we sit around and we watch the larger population have things like an insurrection in January 6th. That wasn't an insurrection. That was an exercise in mental illness. All right, you guys know what I want to say about that. So I don't want to go too far. But I'm going to suggest, and Satana, if you could put it up, the banner for the National Suicide Hotline, I would appreciate it. And let me tell people as well, the banner, when you call the hotline, you don't have to be in crisis about suicide. These are mental health professionals that are there to talk to you. This is the prevention hotline. The prevention hotline. Okay? Prevention is a big thing. So, don't be afraid to call. Don't be afraid to call a loved one. Get them on the phone. Let them know, hey, listen, this is it. And as well, I would ask that you actually look up the Association for Black Psychologists so you can get a referral in your area. All right? There are not a lot of them, but there's enough of them that we can have a referral, and you can do telehealth and all these type of things. Alhamdulillah, but don't wait. All right? So that's my 2 cents. So let me go to the grand wrap up. I want to give a shout out to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. You can call 202-508-3780. Again, that's 202-508-3780. And if you're interested in quality graduate level education, Bayan Islamic Graduate School, brothers and sisters, go to bayonline.org. Again, that's bayonline.org. They are looking for summer applications, so don't delay. And we're going to give a shout out to ShOUT TV, our newest partner, ShOUT TV. Make sure you check them out. They're doing wonderful things over there. Subscriptions are up. They have discounts for Black History Month. We're going to have some ads on that, so make sure you get over there and check them out. Show some love to those folks. And, of course, we want to give a shout out to, that's right, Convenient Urgent Care. That's www.convenienturgent.com, www.convenienturgent.com. Check them out, Convenient Urgent Care. That's our show for today, brothers and sisters. Remember, mental health is mental wealth. I'm your host, Preacher Moss. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.